Hello, good morning from Vienna, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the CCPCJ side event organized by Nitivajra Institute of the Office of the Attorney General of Thailand with the great support of the UNODC Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice Section. Today, our topic is on the protecting children from crime and violence, the UN model strategy and practical measures on the elimination of violence against children in the field of crime prevention and criminal justice, which I think this is a topic that close to our heart and is always actually the journey of the model strategy is begin here in Vienna when we have later expert group meeting discussing about violence against children and in 2012, and that we walk away through the robust support from many like-minded countries and also from Thailand under the leadership of Her Royal Highness Pacharakitiyapha. And then we have for Thailand, and we later approval of the resolution that adopted by the CCPCJ in 2014, right? And then later the year, we have the adoption of the General Assembly, and it happened the UN model strategy and practical measures on the elimination of violence against children in the field of crime prevention and criminal justice. Therefore, this is always a pleasure to speak about the UN model strategy at its birthplace here in Vienna. And I think today we will have a great moment remind about the importance of the model strategy. And we have the 4 distinguished speakers with us both on site and online to kindly share with you the experience and knowledge working on the issues. My name is Santani Disayabut. I'm the director of Nitivajra of the Secretariat Institute of the Nitivajra Institute under the Office of the Attorney General of Thailand, and I will serve as the moderator. And on my right-hand side, I'm honored to have Dr. Alexandra Martin. Dr. Alexandra Martin is a team leader of the End Violence Against Children team in UNODC. She also head of the UNODC Global Program to End Violence Against Children. And Dr. Alexandra played a key role from the start of the model strategy in Vienna also. And on my left-hand side, I have the honor to introduce Dr. Sanpat Ratchatawan from Nitivajra Institute, Office of the Attorney General. He will speak about the Thailand experience in implementing the model strategies. And I also delighted to have honorable speaker with us online, Ms. Anne Lee, Senior Advisor of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Norway, who have been work with us along the process of negotiation of the model strategy. And we are very nice to have you here with us, even via Zoom, to make our site event really hybrid one. And our last speaker, we have the honor to receive Professor Jennifer Davison, Executive Director of the Institute for Inspiring Children Futures, University of Strathclyde, who will share with us her experience from UK in relation to the implementation of science and evidence that can help bridge the gap between policy and children's day-to-day life in relation to implementation of the model strategies. So this, I introduce all our speakers to save the time. So because we have a short time for every speaker, because to give you more time to listen to the speaker. Honor, a great honor from Dr. Najat Mala. Then she will hear from her together.
Distinguished panelists and guests, dear participants, the adoption of the United Nations model strategies and practical measures on the elimination of violence against children in the field of crime prevention and criminal justice has been an important step in our collective commitment to address violence against children. Developed through extensive research, consultation, and collaboration, these strategies offer a comprehensive framework for member states to adopt and implement within their crime prevention and criminal justice systems. Allow me to share some key issues highlighting their importance and relevance at this crucial moment, as investing in inclusive, just, peaceful societies, keeping all children safe from violence is needed more than ever. First, too many children worldwide are still left behind. Due to the impact of the ongoing and multiple crises, more children than ever are experiencing violence in all settings. More children than ever are facing extreme poverty, discrimination, and social inequalities. More children than ever are forcibly displaced, fleeing conflicts, climate change, widespread violence, food insecurity. Criminal networks are increasingly taking advantage of these vulnerabilities to sell, buy, and exploit children. Most crimes against children go unreported. Most victims remain unidentified. Most perpetrators, traffickers, exploiters go unprosecuted. Only a minority of child victims seek help or advice, and access to justice and protection is challenging for many children, mainly for the most vulnerable. Second, the human and economic costs of violence against children are huge. Exposure to violence, stress, exclusion, and crisis causes immediate and long-term physiological and psychological damage, which will cost up to $393 billion annually. Investing in cross-sectoral, child and gender-sensitive violence prevention and protection systems has a high return. Indeed, ending violence against children will save as much as 8% of GDP in welfare, health, education, and other services. Third, justice is a key sector of child violence prevention and protection systems. Our starting point must be the preventive role that justice can play in ensuring that children's rights are protected. It is imperative that we strengthen legal framework to criminalize all forms of violence against children in those areas where the existing gaps are being taken by the criminal and abuser to act with total impunity. This includes technology-facilitated crimes and boosts their implementation to ensure perpetrators are held accountable for their action. Children at risk need to benefit from targeted support to prevent situations where they may be exposed to violence or and manipulated by criminal networks, traffickers, armed or violent extremist groups. This emphasizes the importance of early intervention programs, education, and awareness raising. Empowering children, families, and communities is critical to achieving access to justice for all children. Secondly, ensuring easy and equal access to child-friendly justice system equipped with the necessary expertise and resources to investigate and respond to cases of crimes and violence against children online and offline is crucial. The importance of victim support and rehabilitation cannot be underestimated. Children who have experienced or witnessed violence require specialized care, protection, and access to justice. This underscores the need for multidisciplinary services such as counseling, medical and psychosocial assistance, and legal aid, among others. Justice sector actors, from judge to police to legal aid providers, need to work together and with key actors of child protection, health, education, and social sectors. Thirdly, states must invest in child rights-based alternative solutions for children with challenging behavior to break the cycle of violence and crimes. Too many children are still deprived of liberty for status offenses that should not be regarded as crimes, or minor offenses that could be resolved and addressed without the need for punitive intervention. Deprivation of liberty exposes children to further violence and crimes, results in high rates of recidivism, family breakdown, and unemployment, and generates higher costs for societies. States must end deprivation of liberty of children by decriminalizing status offenses, raising the minimum age of criminal responsibility, and investing in alternatives such as diversion and restorative justice. Children are above all children. There are no good or bad children. All children must be protected everywhere, including in the justice system and at all times without discrimination. Finally, justice can better meet the rights of children and be more effective if it is informed by children's views and experiences and built on children's effective participation. Without engaging children as part of solution, we can never achieve significant and sustainable results in tackling violence against children. The protection of their rights to participation and freedom of expression should always prevail. Ladies and gentlemen, with less than 7 years left for keeping the promise of Agenda 2030, the time for action is now. We must invest more and more in preventing and protecting children from violence and crimes, leaving no child behind. Thank you.
I would like to begin our first panel discussion by inviting Dr. Alessandra Martin to share with us her experience and the program on ending violence against children. Dr. Alessandra, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Santani. Good morning, distinguished participants, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to thank those who are joining us online, especially colleagues from Thailand. It's an honor for me to be here today and to talk about the UN model strategies on violence against children in the field of crime prevention and criminal justice. I would like to thank the Special Representative of the Secretary General for her very strong and inspiring words. I also take this opportunity to remind you all that the SRSG will be here in Vienna. She's arriving today, and she will address the plenary of the Commission on Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice on Thursday under the agenda item on standards and norms in crime prevention and criminal justice. As I mentioned, it's really an honor to be here. I worked very closely with the government of Thailand, Santani, the Office of the Attorney General, Ms. Anne-Lee Ferguson, under the leadership of Her Royal Highness, Princess Pasharakitiyaba Mahidol. And I have to say that if it was not for the strong leadership and commitment of Thailand, we would not have this very important set of international standards and norms to safeguard children from crime and violence. So it's really a privilege for me to be here and to remind ourselves, practitioners, policymakers, lawmakers, that there is this strong framework for changing the mindset, for changing the paradigm, and for taking measures that will prevent violence in the first place and respond effectively when violence has occurred. As the SRSG strongly stated, it is very, very important to deepen our knowledge and understanding of what is violence against children. When we picture an image of violence against children, we might think of issues that are smacking, physical violence, but violence is much more than that. So back in 2005, the Secretary General commissioned a global study on violence against children. It was a study developed by Professor Paulo Sérgio Pinheiro, and a study that unfortunately did not touch upon the crucial role of the criminal justice system and, broadly speaking, of the justice system in preventing and responding to serious forms of violence against children. So it gave us in 2012 the opportunity as UNODC to start a very intense dialogue with member states and understand that there was a need for an international law that guides the action of member states all over the world on what is the role of the criminal justice system in preventing and responding to serious forms of violence against children. And why I'm stressing the word serious forms of violence against children, because I would like to start by saying the criminal justice system does not have to intervene in all cases of violence against children. So violence is a complex phenomenon. It might be bullying in school, and perhaps other systems have a key responsibility to intervene, as the education system, the child protection system, sometimes the health system. The criminal justice system has, however, a key role to end impunity and to end the tolerance in our societies that violence is not a problem. So when it's a serious form of violence, it is a crime. And therefore, there is no end to this serious crime if there is no strong action by actors within the criminal justice system. So what I would like to start also by saying is that we need to deepen the understanding and knowledge of what is violence against children. Still, in many countries all over the world, horrible crimes against children, and we can mention, for example, female genital mutilation, is not considered a crime. So a crime is not only the law defines, but quite often society, social norms and behaviors accept certain practices that represent a crime and a serious form of violence against children. It's also very important to understand the different manifestations of violence. So as I said, abuse, neglect can represent also a serious form of violence against children. And as mentioned by the SRSG, it's also very, very important to acknowledge the impact that violence has on the individual child that suffered from violence, but also equally important on society at large. So when we talk with economists, when we talk with financial institutions, we change our language and we talk about the macroeconomic impact of this serious form of violence against children, because the repercussions and the impact it will have on the human capital of many societies is something that we can no longer neglect. So without bold and holistic action by a variety of actors, and not only the criminal justice system, but also all the systems, without acknowledging that tackling violence against children requires a whole of society approach and a whole of governmental approach, we will not achieve significant results. So now, narrowing down to the model strategies, what is this? So for jurists and for lawyers, it's a set of international standards and norms. It's a non-legally binding instrument that offers guidance to member states on how to prevent and respond to violence against children, and in particular, the role of the criminal justice system, but in cooperation with other systems. So for the first time in history, the international community acknowledged that there is a need to first and foremost understand this problem from a systemic point of view. And second, try to find solutions that are also systemic. So we all know the incredible waste of resources, and I'm not only talking about financial resources, but the incredible waste of operational, human, and financial resources when we, in good faith, try to tackle issues such as violence against children. We have to acknowledge that we all operate in silos. There is the role of prosecutors, the role of law enforcement, the role of judges, but seldom we recognize that there is a need to emphasize the role of different actors heading towards the same direction. Now, the SRSG mentioned that evidence shows that there is an increasing number of violence perpetrated against children all over the world. And rather than talking about specific types of crime, if we want to adopt a child protection systemic approach for dealing with this, it's first and foremost important to try to understand the context that open doors for children to be more vulnerable to crime and violence. So the first one that I would like to mention are contexts of insecurity. So in contexts where there is armed conflict, in contexts where there is counterterrorism, violent extremism, in contexts where organized criminal groups are ruling states and cities, These are the contexts where children might be more prone to be instrumentalized by these criminal groups. Children are more prone to be victims of crime and violence, and the state intervention and society intervention is definitely needed and urgent. The second context I would like to mention is the cyberspace. So more and more, the online world is shaping our daily life. So we are focusing much more on what is happening online than on what's happening in here. So while if we see, for example, a child naked on the street as an adult, we have the instinct to remove our clothes and cover that child. That's not the same happening online and in the cyberspace. The lack of regulation, the lack of proper laws, the lack of knowledge, and the lack of professionals to tackle, for example, child sexual abuse and exploitation online is a serious threat that undermines human capital in a number of countries. There are countries in Southeast Asia, for example, where over 20% of the population between 12 and 17 years old, 20%, 1 out of 5 children have been victims of online child sexual abuse and exploitation. So you can only think what is the human capital of this country if this is the situation. So without further delay, I would like to mention that the model strategies take this systemic look and start with prevention. What are the measures that states can take to prevent, first and foremost, child involvement in crime and violence? The second part of the model strategies talk about child victims and witnesses. And here stresses the need of having criminal justice systems that are ready and equipped to tackle serious forms of violence against children and to deal with child victims in a way that won't re-victimize them. Third part of the model strategies talk about juvenile justice. When a child is in contact with the justice system as an alleged offender, what does the system need to put in place to prevent secondary re-victimization? Just an example, the less children we have within the juvenile justice system, the more likely we will be able to protect him or her from violence within the system. So UNODC is very proud to have been the custodian of this instrument. We are very proud to have been working with countries like Thailand that play a leadership role on not only in Asia, but all over the world in promoting this instrument. And there is a strong need that collectively we go back to the basics of understanding first and foremost, what is a child? In 2023, trust me, there is a need to remind ourselves of why individuals below the age of 18 that sometimes are called not as children anymore, but as youth, deserve a specific set of guarantees and specific safeguards to be protected from crime and violence. What is a child? Neuroscience explains that the brain of an individual below the age of 18 is not fully developed. And therefore, neuroplasticity can explain to us, not only international law, why they deserve a different treatment. Justice systems should be well equipped and professionals to understand what is violence and how to respond to this effectively. And finally, that we will achieve very little if we do not strengthen our partnerships with our usual partners, but also with new actors such as the private sector, international financial institutions, and I commend the presence here of the Inter-American Development Bank, and new actors that have also a key role to play. Thank you very much. I look very much forward to continuing this dialogue with you. And thank you, Santini, for allowing me.
I allowing you for a few minutes delay. So Alexandra said that violence against children is not only the criminal justice issue, but we need a holistic approach to tackle the problem. Okay, let me turn to our my left-hand side, my dear colleague, Dr. Sanpat, experience of Thailand, please.
Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed colleagues and distinguished guests. I'm honored to be here today at the 32 CCPCJ to discuss a crucial and pressing issue that affects the lives and well-being of countless children worldwide. My name is Sanpat Rachatawan, and I serve as a public prosecutor with the Office of the Attorney General in Thailand. Today, I will be addressing the topic of protecting children from crime and violence, as Dr. Alexander Martins has already provided valuable insight into the UN model strategies. So today, I will briefly touch on some of those points. However, the core of my presentation will be the crucial role that criminal justice plays in preventing violence against children and the concrete steps that Thailand, as a pivotal contributor in the drafting of the UN model, has undertaken to implement these strategies. I hope that our experience in Thailand and endeavor may serve as a valuable examples for other countries, particularly those with similar contexts with Thailand and levels of economic development. So yeah, in this slide, let's take a brief look at the purpose and goals of the UN model strategies. At their core, the UN model strategies act as a comprehensive guide for nations aiming to prevent and address violence against children within a crime prevention and justice system. They are built around a primary goal, ensuring fair and compassionate treatment for child victims and witnesses. And have a look at the scope of the strategy. The scope is vast, tackling all forms of violence against children in diverse settings, whether it's at home, school, within communities, or in the digital world. So in summary, by adopting and putting these strategies into practice, we are collectively working towards our shared goal, a society that is safer and more equitable for all children, today and in the future. So in this slide, essentially, the UN model presents 17 strategic guidelines to counter violence against children. So these guidelines are organized into 3 main areas. The first one is prohibition and general prevention. This is all about making laws to protect children and putting together broad programs to prevent violence. And secondly, the capacity building. Here we are looking at how we can improve our justice system to better deal with cases of violence against children and protect victims. And third, prevention and response within the justice system. So this is about reducing violence within the justice system itself, protecting children's rights and providing the right kind of care and support. And while our time today doesn't allow us to delve deeply into each area, it's crucial to understand that these strategies are thoroughly discussed in the UN model strategy documents. Now I will shift my focus to the role of criminal justice in preventing violence against children. In this slide, based on the UN model strategies, we will explore the critical role of the criminal justice system in preventing violence against children. And here, as you can see, they have 4 main points. First, we need to strengthen our legal frameworks and policy. It means making sure our laws meet international standards and that our policy are sensitive to children's needs. And second, we need to enhance the capacity of our criminal justice institutions. And this involves adopting ways to deal with cases that consider children's unique needs and ensuring we can respond effectively to violence against children. And third, we need comprehensive prevention programs. This program should address the root causes of violence, raise awareness, and promote understanding in our society. So lastly, we must promote partnerships and collaboration. This means getting government agencies, civil society, and international bodies involved in coordinated efforts to fight against violence against children. Focusing on these 4 elements, we can better protect children from crime and violence. Well, in this slide, let's turn our attention to some of the concrete actions Thailand has taken in implementing the UN model strategies. We have several notable practices and case studies to highlight. So, for example, firstly, in 2021, the Thai government assembled a committee to draft legislation aimed at tackling the pressing issue of online child sexual exploitation and abuse, also known as OXI. This proposed law is currently under consideration of the Ministry of Justice. And in 2017 and again in 2020, Thai law enforcement took a significant leap forward in international cooperation. The Royal Thai Police and the Department of Special Investigation were granted direct access to Interpol's information system, a move that greatly enhanced their capacity to combat international crimes, including the distribution of child sex abuse images. Of particular importance, the Thai Attorney General's Office and the Thailand Institution of Justice, or TIJ, have made the UN model strategy accessible in Thai language. And this crucial step not only raised awareness, but also promotes the application of these strategies among key stakeholders, including government agencies, academia, the media, and the general public. So in summary, this example underscores the proactive steps that Thailand has taken in aligning its child protection measure with the UN model strategies, thereby contributing to the global efforts to prevent violence against children. So as we have just discussed the promising practices and case study in Thailand's implementations of the UN model strategies, I would now like to provide you with a specific example of one such program, the Integrated Rehabilitation and Restoration Program for Children and Youth. And this program is initiated by Nitivajra Institute, Office of the Attorney General. This initiative showcases Thailand's commitment to protect children while focusing on their rehabilitation and reintegration. So it offers capacity development training for practitioners and targeted program for children and youth, exemplifying the effective implementation of the UN model strategy in practices. The program also emphasizes critical thinking and problem-solving skills through various activities. As we move forward, it's crucial to learn from promising practice like this, adapting them to different countries' needs to ensure successful implementation of the UN model strategy and protect children from crime and violence worldwide. Moving on to the outcome of the program, we have witnessed several positive results. We have seen a noteworthy transformation in youth behavior coupled with a decrease in repeated offenses. Children and youth involved in the program have developed enhanced critical thinking skills and problem-solving abilities. And participants have shown improvement in teamwork planning and communication skills. And also, lastly, an uptick in self-confidence and professional skills development has also been noted. So our data showcase a drastic decrease in the recidivism rate from 27.68% in 2019 down to 12.9% in 2021, and this decline underscores the program effectiveness in inspiring positive change and rehabilitation children and youth. So thank you very much for your attention and engagement in this important discussion. By following the UN model strategies and working together, I believe we can make a significant impact on the lives of countless children worldwide. And if you have any questions or comments, I'm more than happy to address them in Q&A session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sanpat, for sharing with us the development of Thailand action towards ending violence against children, especially the one on the online child sexual exploitation, the draft law, and also the program rehabilitation program. So we already hear from Thailand. I think it's now I would like to hear from our honorable online speaker, Dr. Miss Anne Lee Ferguson. Please share with us the experience of Norway and especially the experience from you yourself that walking through the UN model strategy since the negotiation. The floor is yours, Anne, please.
Thank you very much. Yes, SRSG, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues and friends. First of all, I would like to thank the Nitivajra Institute and UNODC for organizing this important event. I'm truly honored to be invited to participate. In 2006, the United Nations study on violence against children made a global effort to understand the extent and causes of violence against children. Children in the juvenile justice systems, according to the report, may be the victims of physical, psychological, and sexual violence by staff and adult detainees in detention centers. These offenses can occur during a child's arrest, while being interrogated, or in police custody. They're often meted out as punishment or as a form of sentencing. Hold on. Factors contributing to violence against children in the juvenile justice system range from weak legislation and enforcement to a lack of qualified professionals and the absence of effective oversight and inspection mechanisms. Issues may also arise when there is a lack of cooperation between the justice, social welfare, and child protection sectors. The report called on every nation to respond to all forms of violence against children, including in the justice system. The United Nations model strategies and practical measures on the elimination of violence against children in the field of crime prevention and criminal justice is a major contribution in this regard and a huge accomplishment. The model strategies were developed to support a comprehensive, system-wide and strategic approach in the field of crime prevention and criminal justice to effectively prevent and respond to violence against children. Much has been learned, particularly since the adoption of the Convention of the Rights of the Child, about the most effective strategies to achieve that goal. The model strategies bring that knowledge together with a clear understanding of the issues to propose a comprehensive action framework. Her Royal Highness Princess Bayrakitiyaba Maidol initiated this process and was a driving force behind it. As explained by Dr. Alexandra Martins and Dr. Sampat Ratavayan, the model strategies are divided in 3 broad categories, out of which strategies and measures to prevent and respond to violence against children in contact with the justice system is one. Instead of prevention, states often rely on repressive and punitive policies that lead to excessive criminalization. Despite encouragement by the Committee on the Rights of the Child to states to increase the minimum age of criminal responsibility to at least 14 years, over 120 states maintain the minimum age at below 14. Legislation and practice allowing life imprisonment without possibility of release and capital and corporal punishment still persists, despite their absolute prohibition under Article 37.8 of the CRC. Over-reliance on arrest and detention is also caused by lack of resources within the administration of justice. In many states, police officers, judges, prosecutors, and prison guards lack specialized child-sensitive training, are underpaid, and may be susceptible to corruption. Although children are guaranteed legal or other appropriate assistance in the preparation and presentation of their defense, functioning state-funded legal aid systems are completely absent in many states. Children deprived of liberty remain an invisible and forgotten group in society, despite increasing evidence of these children being victims of human rights violations. Countless children are placed in inhuman conditions and in adult facilities in clear violation of their rights, where they are at high risk of violence, rape, and sexual assault, including acts of torture and cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. According to the Global Study on Children Deprived of Their Liberty, at least 410,000 children are held in detention every year in remand centers and prisons. This does not include an estimated 1 million children held every year in police custody. Violence continues to be endemic at all stages of deprivation of liberty. The resort to corporal punishment and other violent means of control and discipline, as well as the excessive use of restraint measures and solitary confinement, persists in many states. Children are being detained at a younger and younger age and held for longer periods of time. The personal cost to these children is immeasurable in terms of destructive impact on their physical and mental development and on their ability to lead healthy and constructive lives in society. In this regard, I would like to shed light on a particular group of children, namely children associated with armed groups, including those designated as terrorists. The model strategies, para 15A, states that the risk of violence associated with exploitation by criminal groups should be addressed by specific prevention measures to prevent the recruitment, use, and victimization of children by criminal groups, terrorist entities, or violent extremist groups. During their association with such groups, children are indeed subjected to extreme levels of violence. According to international law, children who have been recruited and used in armed conflict should be treated first and foremost as victims that should be protected and supported to reintegrate into society. This applies to all children, also those who have committed crimes and those who are being associated with armed groups, including terrorist groups. Still, we constantly observe that this is forgotten in practice. Children who have been victimized by armed groups are often being re-victimized by the authorities upon their release. Instead of being handed over to child protection personnel and reintegrated into society, they are being imprisoned, treated as criminals, and prosecuted for participation in terrorist activities in military courts. Lately, we have also seen children being sentenced to death because of their association with armed groups. When countering terrorism, states are required to respect international human rights. And as a matter of fact, it is indeed a necessary prerequisite for successful counterterrorism. Still, there is a lack of understanding and competencies on how to deal with children who may have committed terrorism-related offenses. Effectively, addressing the problem requires both a good understanding on how to address terrorist offenses and a profound knowledge of juvenile justice and applicable juvenile justice standards. The model strategies are helpful also in this regard, and based on them, the UNODC has developed comprehensive guidance and tools on how to best deal with these children. One of the first countries to implement them successfully was Colombia. Countries like Indonesia and Nigeria have, in cooperation with UNODC, implemented the model strategies to prevent and respond to violence against children by terrorist and violent extremist groups, and to strengthen rehabilitation and reintegration strategies for children associated with terrorist groups. Violence against children is never justifiable and always preventable. It is the duty of states to protect children, including those in conflict with the law, from all forms of violence and human rights violations, and to exercise due diligence to prohibit, prevent, and investigate acts of violence against children, eliminate impunity, and provide assistance to the victims, including prevention of re-victimization. We do, to a wide extent, have a comprehensive normative framework in place. It does, however, need to be translated into practice. This is where the model strategies come in so handy. They explain how international obligations and relevant UN standards and norms in crime prevention and criminal justice can be implemented in practice.
Yeah. Thank you,
Dedicated use of the model strategies will contribute substantially to the elimination of violence against children in the field of crime prevention and criminal justice. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anne. Yeah, I really don't want to cut you off. Yeah, but we still have one distinguished speaker from the UK, and I would like to hear from her as well. So thank you very much, Anne. Yeah, and then I would like to ask Professor Davison to share with us your experience.
Thank you very much. Distinguished colleagues and guests, it's a delight to be here and to be speaking with you today. A real honor. Thank you for inviting me. And I bring with me a perspective that perhaps is less heard in our discussions about violence against children. And that is a reflection of hope, and one that is about what we can really do to make a change happen. The UN model has given us incredible opportunities to be understanding what we can do in tangible ways in our countries and in our communities to ensure that children are protected. And this is such an important statement of hope, because we are clear that there are things that can be done, and we are learning over the last decade what those can be. And so I bring with you just one example that helps us to think together about what can be done to respond, in particular to victims and witnesses. And many of you may already be familiar with this example, but I use this example for two reasons. One is, again, to give us a sense of hope of what really can be done that is life-changing for children in these circumstances. And the second is to use it as an illustration for us to be thinking about the implementation of these laws right through to the day-to-day lives of children. And while we are often speaking about these laws at an international level, we're here at the Crime Commission to be speaking about multilateral cooperation. a strong coherence on what is important to be done in country. And today's panel is looking at what has been done in many countries. What I'd like to illustrate is also what are the principles that we can take on board from evidence to ensure that we are sustainably implementing those changes on the ground for children. So the example that I wish to share with you is called the Barnahus model, which has come from Iceland and is now sort of taking over many countries of Europe. It has been drawn from the US Child Advocacy Center model and the Canada's Child and Youth Advocacy Centers that integrates the service of responding to children and young people who are victims of abuse into the national welfare and the justice systems. For those of you who may not be familiar with this particular model or this ethos that we are establishing, you may just wish to Google the promise, Barnahus, the promise, and that gives a great deal of information about the networks that are established to then ensure that children, when they have experienced violence, can speak in a child-friendly setting about their experience and that they are not re-traumatized. The key element of Barnahus is that there's a whole multi-sectoral team of people working around the child, bringing together services in what is called a 4 rooms approach of child protection, health, justice, and recovery services, all made available in one setting. And this is to reduce the number of times that children are having to recount their experiences, and it allows a coordinated approach that places the needs of the child at the center of all of those services that are being provided. I would encourage you to take a closer look at that model and those models if you wish. What I'd like to reflect on now with that illustration is a consideration of how did we get to being able to deliver good quality services to children in that multi-sectoral way. We've heard from the panel from the very beginning, from Dr. Martins, about the importance of bringing all of these services together for the child, that we work in silos much of the time, and we're looking to overcome those silos for children. There's an example that I find very compelling that comes from the health sector. We know from evidence that although we understood that aspirin can help to thin the blood and reduce the likelihood of stroke in a substantial way. Nevertheless, when that evidence became clear, it still took another 17 years in the United States for that evidence to be implemented in a regular way with doctors prescribing this very simple medication for their patients. 17 years, even though 17 years ago we knew that this was something that would contribute substantially to reducing health concerns. What do we learn about how we speed up that process when we have the evidence of what is beneficial to children and ending violence against children? There is evidence that we can draw on that tells us what will speed up that implementation process. We've heard from our experience in Thailand about the capacity building and the multi-sectoral approaches, the elements that we've heard from Dr. Sanpat. And what I'd like to suggest to us is our 2 principles. One is the understanding of the alignment of practices. And that is that the notion, if we're trying to change how we're engaging with children at the very interface of those children, as we're speaking with those children in practice, we need to be thinking about the multiple levels that work around that child, the worker, the community, the professionals, right through to the UN model strategies at the top of those layers. Or if we think about concentric circles, the practices that we're implementing are essential at every level to support the practice that we're looking for at a initial space where we're engaging with children. And what we often think about around training, for example, is not effective on its own. If we're thinking about coaching, if we're also thinking about clarity about the practice, these are elements that help us to then scale up and ensure that we can implement in a sustainable way and in a consistent way the kinds of practices that we're called to deliver by the UN model strategies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Jennifer. You really help us right on time, and I really sad to say that we never have enough time. But I think I thank you very much for being with us today. I think I believe that with our collective effort, ending violence against children is not a dream, but it's a goal that can be successfully achieved at the end. Thank you very much.